Hey, everybody listening either live right now or who will be watching, as most of my prior lives have been. I get a lot of my viewers from the podcast who are asleep right now on the other side of the world watching afterwards. But please, thank you for joining us here live. We're going to get started here in just a moment. In the interim, if you have a moment, we have put up a poll here on the community page of Kathy's Indie Zone an hour ago, and we have approximately 100 people so far who have responded to it. And this is with regards to the under seal videotaped interview that Detective Brett Payne conducted of Mr. Coberger minutes after his arrest in Pennsylvania. There is a 45-minute videotaped interview. It's Detective Payne and a representative of the Idaho State Police, Gilbertson, asking questions of Mr. Coberger literally minutes after his arrest in Pennsylvania. If you have not already cast your vote in terms of if you feel that that videotaped interview should be released to the public, I would greatly appreciate it if you would take the opportunity to cast your vote, whether you feel that not important. He's pled guilty. Nothing important there to be gained. Or if you feel that it would be beneficial for you to see that video that exists of Mr. Coberger being interviewed, Pennsylvania State Police Barracks, just after 2 a.m. on December 30th, 2022. I'd appreciate it if you could cast your vote. Oh, WB, great to see you. Most, in terms of WB's question, most of the people who follow this YouTube channel are from my podcast, and they're going to come aboard later on because a lot of them are in Tokyo, Singapore. They're asleep right now. So if everyone could say hello to them, I'd appreciate it. Hi, hello, YouTube. Thank you for being here. WB. I want to get started if we could. As I said, we have a poll on the community page. I think we have about 100 votes. It went up about an hour ago of this videotaped interview of Mr. Coberger that is under seal right now. Who interviewed him? Where was he interviewed? First question, Detective Brett Payne interviewed Mr. Coberger. Where was he interviewed? Monroe County, Pennsylvania, in a conference room, Pennsylvania State Police Barracks. Why Pennsylvania? Why would Detective Brett Payne interview Brian C. Coberger in Pennsylvania on December 30th, 2022, minutes after 2 a.m.? As we know from reviewing the case documents, which people who follow this channel tend to do, they want to see the documents for themselves, whether from the case files, whether from the Moscow Police Department recent dissemination of several hundred pages of documents. The people who follow the podcast and this YouTube channel don't want to be told what the evidence says, don't want to be treated as though they're 6 years old and told by their parents, trust us. This is for your own good. This is what this means, and don't question. The people who've historically followed me, beginning on the podcast, which predated this YouTube channel by about 2 years, they want to see the evidence for themselves. We do not have the evidence even now. Even with the recent July 23rd dissemination of several hundred pages of documents on the City of Moscow's website from the investigation files, that's not evidence. That's Detective Brett Payne. That is Chief James Fry. That is every other member of the Moscow Police Department who wrote those narratives. They are telling us what they believe the evidence shows. They are referring to recordings of interviews with witnesses, videotaped interviews, including with Mr. Coberger himself, photographs, what the evidence shows. We still don't have the evidence. And I don't understand this. I want to say hello to everyone. Mambo's here today. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much, particularly to those that are here in chat today, because I do a very poor job of promoting and marketing what it is that I do, which is basically just an independent voice looking at this case. I learned about this case 2.5 years ago, as many of you did. My husband told me about it, and he had said, "Did you hear about this case of these 4 students that were unalived in Idaho?" And it was so bad that there was liquid seeping out of the building. And from there, I learned about the case, and I decided, as a retired attorney, as an educator, that I wanted to learn about this case. I've had a podcast for many, many years, independent everything, music, art, books, and I knew I was going to, turn over to true crime. And I wanted to do a series of cases, follow a few cases. But when I really learned this case, I said, if I'm going to follow Idaho versus Coberger, it's that case or nothing else. You can't follow this case independently and then split your time with something else. And that's been absolutely the truth. And earlier this year, I was looking at, and I did some polls because I thought my work on this case was coming to an end. And then we all received the shock a month ago, almost exactly to today. 4 weeks ago today was the day before, was when apparently the plea deal was signed. Sunday, June 29th. June 30th, Monday, we had learned about this plea deal that seemed to come out of nowhere, because at that time, for all the public knew, matters were heading toward trial. Questionnaires were going out to jurors. There was going to be voir dire that was held, and there was going to be a trial mid-August. How did you all feel when you learned? Hi, Bad Mom. Glad you're here, Bray. Jackie, Mama, thank you. How did the people in chat feel when you got the news 4 weeks ago, after more than 2.5 years of Mr. Coberger proclaiming his innocence, and the state saying, we are going to prosecute this case? If the DP was created for anyone, it was created for this case. How did you feel? Tina, thank you so much for being here. I am so happy that you are here. Tina is one of my old school, longtime supporters. There have been times when I have wondered, is anyone really out there listening, watching this? And Tina is one of the few people who many, many moons ago let me know that this content was valuable to some. So I appreciate you all being here. Mr. Mojo, thank you for Mr. Mojo saying he was shocked when he learned the news of this plea deal where Mr. Coberger was going to make a complete about face and now want to proclaim in open court that he was guilty to the 5 first-degree felonies charged by operation of the indictment. So Mr. Mojo saying, I am shocked. Capelli saying, I was visibly angry when I heard about this plea. Everyone else is saying shocked, completely unraveled. I think we all had. Robbed is what Jackie is saying. She felt robbed. Everyone that I know who has been, I believe in this, my content seems to appeal to a specific segment of the true crime so-called community, people who want to see the evidence. They don't want to be told by me what the evidence shows. They want to see the evidence for themselves. And ladies and gentlemen, we still have not seen the evidence for ourselves. So I too, with all of you, I was planning that the Idaho versus Coberger podcast was coming to an end, that the coverage on the YouTube channel was coming to an end, and I had identified 3 or 4 other cases that I was going to start then reporting on with the Kohberger case. And that monkey wrench thrown into that plan 4 weeks ago. And it's just, we had anticipated a trial. And why a trial was so important, in my opinion, in this case, is because of the lack of transparency from day one. In my opinion, the Moscow Police Department was less than transparent. They released very little. And they cleared a lot of people very soon. And in my opinion, they gave out contradictory information. Targeted attacked, not a targeted attack. One of the people, it was the house, it was none of these. It was like, what are you talking about? This is not what the public expects. And it's not just the public in Moscow, although that was obviously the most impacted public, and not even the people of, this is the people of the United States and the world that are impacted here, of a potential lunatic who did these crimes. When we've learned of the severity of some of these injuries, we need assurances that the sole and the correct defendant is behind bars. And I will come out here right now and say, I am not satisfied of either of those initiatives, particularly in looking at what the city of Moscow has just released, and why it is that all of this evidence in this case is still being withheld from the public. Mr. Coberger entered a plea of guilty in open court July 2nd. We are now going into the end of July. Why Judge Stephen J. Hippler is every single document of the mountain of evidence under seal in this case still under seal? Why hasn't the public been entitled to see any of the evidence in this case? And I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it is until or unless you look at the case summary page maintained by the clerk of court in Idaho versus Coberger that you will understand just how much is under seal in this case, as if it was some sort of someone told me. You would think this was a revisiting of the JFK assassination, where there was a concern of national security, that everything needed to be under seal. I don't buy it for a minute. I've expressed my concern all along. And I blame both sides, not just the state, but the defense as well. It was Ms. Taylor who went to the defense day 4 of this case and asked for the state to join in this gag order that was in effect until mid-July 2025. And she fought every single effort to try to get that gag order set aside. And she filed as many things under seal as the state did. So I'm not a fan of hers when it comes to withholding information from the public. And you look at the case summary page, it's over 100 pages now. You seal, motion to seal, motion to seal, order granting the sealing of documents, wrote reasons that made no sense. For example, if this evidence is not put under seal, it could compromise the life and safety of people. What people? We don't know. What, did Mr. Coberger get day passes from the Latah County Jail or the Ada County Jail where he could go out and effectuate revenge? These reasons made little sense to me. And you will see, if you look at my podcast, way back the beginning of the case, another motion to seal evidence from the public, another order to seal evidence, another motion, another stipulation. And now, okay, so he's pled guilty. Why is information content? What is it about this case that makes it so special that it needs to be completely hidden from public view? Does anyone in the audience here? It's a disgrace, says Tooth Sleuth. And then there's the U of I. Let's not, we give our opinions here under the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Why was the University of Idaho apparently so involved in this case? We have heard rumors that they were actually in the so-called war rooms with members of law enforcement. Why were they there? This horrible event happened off campus. This wasn't on the university property. Why has U of I played such a big role in this case? Could economics perhaps played a role? I'm completely neutral on that point, but I'm seeing here a couple of people saying, why is U of I in there? Why are they involved? Why are they standing beside Moscow Police Department, the prosecutor, announcing the arrest of Mr. Coberger on December 30th, 2022? When did the University of Idaho and Mr. Green become a member of the law enforcement teams that evaluated and investigated this case? Oh, okay. Mambo's saying here, is that true? Payne, detective, and we're talking about Detective Brett Payne, now works for the University of Idaho. Is that true? Because we saw him just the other day at that quote unquote news conference. And he didn't mention that he was no longer a member of the Moscow Police Department. Bad Mama is speculating, is throwing out there under the First Amendment, as she is entitled to do. She thinks Payne quit. Green and Show, okay, working together. It was all up. Everyone didn't care. I think a lot of you care a lot. Because there is something here. Sometimes I get a lot of feedback. Oh, pro-burgers, you people are pro-burgers, whatever. It's not that. There is something bigger than this case at issue here, and it is our constitutional rights. Trials should be public, and that goes back to the framers of the Constitution, what they wanted. And anyone who wants private trials, they can go move to Iraq or Iran, as far as I'm concerned. It's not how our country was set up. Our country was set up to have public trials, not secret trials, so that the public could be a checks and balances system on the enormous authority that prosecutors have, that judges have, in making sure that our government is operating under the great democracy that the states, the 13 original colonies demanded. Guy is the chief of police in Washington now. Exactly. Yes. I mean, in going back to the origins of our country, there was a wonderful constitution, beautiful constitution that was created in Philadelphia at the Continental Assembly there back in the 1700s. But in order for that constitution to be ratified and for our state, for our government to be created, The 13 original colonies had to sign off, and they said, absolutely no way. We won this, and it was, you want to talk about an underdog, how they ever beat the elite British forces is anyone's concern. They're running around with no food, no uniforms, no even shoes, and they're fighting for their independence. They're crossing the Delaware with General Washington in snow with their feet bleeding. That's how much they wanted to create this democracy. And they said, hey, we're not up for another kingdom here. And they demanded the Bill of Rights. And that's where we got the 5 freedoms. First Amendment. Look at what's first in the Bill of Rights. It's the First Amendment, freedom of speech and press. I think it's there because that was very important to the original states and the colonies that they were, and to the framers, why the First Amendment's there. I haven't been able to report on this case like I want to because of what I've called the mountain of evidence that's under seal and that remains under seal. And now that we're seeing some of the documents, has anyone read the documents that was released on the 23rd after Mr. Kohberger's sentencing proceeding? Has anyone read these documents? But England was among multiple ways. Stone. Working on the Mama's, I know that she is one who demands. She wants to read it for herself. She does not want anyone telling her what her opinion should be. So she is reading it for herself. Richard's Art, another person, very much demands to see documents, evidence before him, before he will make an opinion. I have read multiple pages. Now, I am grateful that we have what we have, because before now, we had nothing as the public. We didn't even have a photograph of suspect. We never even had a photograph of suspect vehicle 1 from the Moscow Police Department. As many times as Detective Brett Payne talked about all this video and all of these stills that they had, when they put out their bolo, be on the lookout, asking for the public's request and help, in seeking the occupant or occupants, plural, of a suspicious vehicle, for some reason, MPD refused to release a single image of suspect vehicle 1. They released 2 stock images, one of a car with a sunroof. Now, I don't know if you have seen Mr. Kohberger's car. We've seen it multiple times, right? The 2 stops in Indiana, the 1 stop in Washington. I don't think he has a sunroof on that car. So why, MPD, are you not releasing an image of suspect vehicle 1, as grainy as it might be, along with maybe a photo of another car, maybe a stock image? I've never seen a bolo that didn't have a picture of the person who was missing. It would be like, we're looking for JonBenet Ramsey, but we're not going to show you a photo of JonBenet Ramsey because she's missing. We're going to show you a photo of another 6-year-old and help us find this other 6-year-old. Outcast, thank you very much. I will attempt to keep up the good work. We're not going anywhere, Outcast. I really thought that my tenure on this case was coming to an end, but not since I've seen these documents. These documents that were released. Now, remember, no evidence is attached. We see Officer Snyder. Do you remember him? You might have seen a photograph of him on the porch of 1112, speaking with, it looked like 3 students on the porch. This is the house right next door to 1122. Well, it turns out that he took hundreds of photos of the property, outside, inside, and he gives a report, Ryan Snyder, but not one photograph is released. Just like Detective Brett Payne, author of the Affidavit of Probable Cause asking for Mr. Kohberger's arrest, has written many, many, many of these reports, but nothing in terms of evidence is attached. He describes his super secret interview of 45 minutes duration with Mr. Kohberger in Pennsylvania, but where's the actual videotape? I would imagine, I would think that if this guy was 100% guilty, we need to throw him away, forget about him, no one else is involved. That would be the first thing I'd want to release. Look how guilty he is. This is minutes after his arrest in Pennsylvania. Why hasn't that been released to the public? Why haven't photographs? Okay, I don't want to see any photographs of the 4 students. May they rest in peace. But other evidence in the house? Where's the photographs of, there was apparently some BLOOD that was on this pong table in the great room of the 2nd floor, in addition to what we've heard about on the stairs. I want to see those photographs that Officer Snyder took on November 13th, 2022. I'd like to see those photographs. WB, thank you very much. I'm here for our rights, because, if someone could be picked up this easily, thrown in jail, from what I'm seeing here, and have to face a trial, oh, by the way, DP, anyone can. This is about our civil rights here. This is about our First Amendment privileges, our 14th Amendment privileges of due process. This goes beyond this case. This is about everyone should be concerned about how easy it seems like it was to target, to arrest one person. And I haven't seen the evidence here. I want to see the evidence. I want to see the evidence so that I can direct you where the evidence is, and you can read the evidence, not listen to me. I'm just another person here. I have no more of a right to say what's right, what's wrong than anyone else. But I am a proponent of, we all have a right and a duty and an obligation to ensure that this country is continuing to operate in the manner that it was set up to operate. And we don't have kings who decide, okay, we're going to throw you in the Tower of London and you have no right to ask questions in terms of members of the public. Well, bad mama, unfortunately, for reasons that I'm questioning right now, he pled guilty. He did so in open court. He told Judge Stephen J. Hippler he was doing so because he was guilty. He's right now, as far as we know, in a maximum state of Idaho prison. But what the public can do is to continue to demand to see the evidence. I want to know how many people that are here today, and also if you're listening and watching later on, feel that this crime, with the little bit of evidence that we have, and we have very little evidence, was committed by more than one person. WB is saying we don't know what happened, what's going on behind closed doors. That is true. We really don't know. We do not know what the evidence is still, and I'm questioning. Why is it? Does anyone know about the glove? Remember the glove? We heard about a couple of things that apparently weren't tested, according to Detective Brett Payne. From what we know of his testimony in the released redacted transcript from the January 23rd, 2025 hearing on the motion to suppress evidence and potentially on the Frank's motion, that he understood that because they had already had Mr. Coberger in their scope as the perpetrator, that any of these, it was one or two, was it two male profiles from the banister from 1 to 2. Oh, as far paraphrasing Detective Payne, I apologize if I'm paraphrasing you incorrectly, but I will go on record in saying this is a paraphrasing. He didn't think that they could put in more profiles into CODIS of 2 more because they had already identified Mr. Coberger. So therefore, in other words, if there are 3 people that, using this frame of logic, that do a holdup in a bank and everyone is unalive, well, we can only go after 1 if there's DNA left over. What about, the glove? I'm just, Cindy Youst, I'm so happy that you brought up the glove. Very fancy and interesting that you would. Cindy asks, what about the glove that was found? Does anyone know how, remember the glove that we had heard about that was found on the property, outside of the property? Do you remember that glove? That mysterious glove? Okay, there was, in addition to the 2 male stains, remember this is now on the railings going down from that very steep 2nd to 1st floor or 1st to 2nd floor, we don't know. I seem to think from what I've read that this was pointing downward, just based on the transcript, nothing else. In my opinion, no facts, completely speculation that this evidence, just from how it was described by Ms. Taylor at the January 23rd, 2025 hearing, in the transcript, it was going downwards. There was a glove that was found outside, and it apparently wasn't tested. Do you understand? Do you know how that glove was eliminated? According to information just released January 23rd. This is based on a narrative. Does anyone know how that glove was eliminated? Well, according to a narrative written by Detective Brett Payne, he saw that glove. He then consulted with body cam footage of Officer Nunez. Why? Because he was the first officer on duty. And from my understanding, I'm just giving here my opinion of how I'm reading this report, Detective Payne decided this was not related to the crime. Now, I'm going to give my opinion here per the First Amendment, as we always do. Officer Snyder took hundreds of photos, inside and outside. I don't see anywhere there where Detective Payne referred to Officer Snyder's photographs to see if that glove was maybe somewhere else on the property and perhaps it didn't get picked up on Officer Nunez's body cam. And then I ask, how does someone make that conclusion? This is within the yellow tape. That's where that glove was. It was within the yellow tape of the crime scene that had been cordoned off by MPD the afternoon of November 13th, 2022. Why wouldn't everything within that crime scene be considered as potential evidence until it's eliminated? Oh, and by the way, he picked up that glove and took it away. We don't know. I guess it's in some sort of an evidence locker, but I'd like to know what Detective Payne's training was in the collection of evidence. Usually there's a crime scene tech that's been trained in that through skills, knowledge, and experience. Will then know how to photograph, document, collect, and ensure that there's no contamination of any potential evidence. 2-year rookie. Lad a dog is saying that Detective Payne is a 2-year rookie. He apparently, from what my understanding was, although the affidavit of probable cause, and I picked this up first time I looked at it, it's very ambiguous, page 1. He talks about when he was basically able to be hired. It doesn't say what his length of experience was. He was apparently hired, from what we're able to conclude, in 2020. And then in November of 2022, 2 years and a few months later, handed what was probably the biggest case the Moscow Police Department ever handled in their existence, possibly one of the biggest cases in Idaho history. What do you feel? Okay, so he was a, Mamo's picking up that he was a military police prior. So she's pointing to, Mama's always looking at the proper administration of justice. She wants to see things on her own. She doesn't want to be told what the evidence is saying. She raises a good point here. The rights that someone has in military, like an officer who's being brought up on charges, they're nothing like the due process privileges a civilian has. So any experience that he may have had in investigating, I don't even know if he did when he was in the military, it's a completely different, like A Few Good Men. Remember that movie? The person, or the two members of the military that were brought up on charges, they don't have the due process privileges that civilians have under the 14th Amendment. Completely different scenario. Mom, great comment. Great comment. Tina, so sorry that you got notified late. I know we're doing a really poor job of notifying people about our lives. We're going to have to work on that. Please keep in mind that Payne went to Penn. Is that confirmed that he trained in Pennsylvania? So anyway, so where are we at this point? We at this point are going through the hundreds of pages that were just released July 23rd. Now, bear in mind, not a single document from the Idaho versus Coberger court files have been unsealed. Recall the hearing that was held before Judge Stephen J. Hippler on July 17th, 2025. That was on the media's motion to set aside the gag order. But 2 days before, they also filed documentation seeking to have the documents under seal in Idaho versus Coberger unsealed. Their research showed that Judge Hippler signed more orders sealing things than any other judge beforehand. That is what one of the declarations in support of the motion to unseal documents said to him. Judge, as much as you stated that you wanted to have things unsealed and telling the parties knock it off in terms of filing things under seal, that declaration from the media said, Judge Hippler, you have sealed more things than any other judge in this case. And I don't quite understand it. When I've seen these documents under seal from him, I don't understand why it is he signed so many things under seal. And then we find it. And what about this investigation into the leak, the so-called leak? It's not a leak. It's a violation of a court order. That is contempt of court. People go to jail for contempt of court. And so we heard on May 15th, and we read that Judge Hippler rendered 2 orders, one to the state, one to the defense. Stop right now. Hold everything. I want to know everybody who had access to evidence under seal in the case. His order to the state was a little bit longer because Judge Hippler said right there in the order that he felt that it was a member of the state of Idaho or a member of prosecution who was responsible for documents and information that might not have even been admissible in the case, somehow making its way to mainstream media. Now, how is that possible? When we have been, as the public, have been told for 2.5 years, no, you can't see this evidence. I'm sorry. This is under seal. There was a person who filed a public records request a couple of days before those document holds, or if you look at the case, you'll see it. And Judge Hippler denied it and said, nope, sorry, this is under seal, but you have no right to file anything in this case. You're going to have to file a public records request. And yet someone had the temerity to decide they were going to take documents that were under seal from the public and give them to the mass media so that the mass media could make a very damning, this was not in any way, shape, or form favorable to Mr. Coberger. In fact, I don't think I ever saw anyone say Mr. Coberger, under the eyes of the law, is considered not guilty until or unless he either pleads guilty or is adjudicated guilty. One time during that NBC special, it was quite against him. And then we see these other efforts. There has been another book. There's all of these specials on Netflix where interviews have been had with people who were supposed to be witnesses. How is that possible? What's the status of that investigation? I'd like to find that out. And I'm not ending this case until I find out what the status is of that investigation, because that goes beyond the Kohberger case. This has to do with the immense power that law enforcement has. And when they violate potentially that authority, just like Judge Hippler said in the document hold order, these are people that are supposed to be upholding the law. I'm going to find out what happened. Is that just now all gone away because of this plea deal? Well, there's more important issues, I would suggest, beyond the state of Idaho and Mr. Coberger that are at issue here, because this case has set a precedent. This case will be cited by other cases in the future. Worst case in my lifetime is what Truth Sleuth is saying. Nothing to see here. Leaks shouldn't be tossed because of plea. Gee whiz, one of my strongest supporters. I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your day and for your generosity. He has been a long-term member of this channel, as well as someone who frequently throws out comments when things don't make sense to him. And you got to very, very, in my opinion, G, great reason, because this case makes no sense to me either. You know, I was looking at the documents that have been produced by the MPD, and we're hearing now about BF being awoken to the sound of what she described as fireworks or firecrackers, not outside the property, but on the first floor. And we know that because she said that she saw the spark coming, light coming under her door on the first floor. Does anyone recall what the first floor setup is and how far BF's bedroom door was to the front door? It is literally around the corner. That long staircase separates her bedroom door from the front door. In fact, that staircase is built into part of her ceiling of her room. So at first, when I heard about this allegation of she was awoken sometime after 4 because of the sound and the sight of light coming up under her bedroom door of what sounded to her as a fireworks, she's not on the second floor. She's not on the third floor. She's on the first floor. Does that tell us that someone was doing something on the first floor? What? She thought, well, maybe this is a prank. Someone's doing a prank? I mean, that's what I might have thought too if I was that age, being woken up, jolted out of my sleep. I might have thought, okay, well, this is, college day, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, frat boys trying to scare, the pretty girls by throwing firecrackers around. What, while a mass unaliving is being perpetuated on the second and third floor? Made no sense to me. Now, when I look at the documents, not only was that BF's statement very early on, in fact, right at the beginning of the case, DM verified that. She had said after this clad in black guy left, that first conversation they had, BF talked about these fireworks. And when this issue of their texts and their calls came up in the eliminate pleadings, it was like, wait, they're saying something like, Ozana was clad in black, get the F out. You saw someone here. There was a statement there. It just seemed like there was something missing. And it seems like this call might have been it, where the two of them had a conversation. We're not sure if it was BF calling DM or DM calling BF, but both of them in their early statements, the Moscow Police Department addressed this issue of these fireworks shenanigans going on the first floor. If that's possible, how do we continue to hold on to the theory that this is a single perpetrator who did all this damage? We're here to help. They were here to help, Elise says. And going back to that infamous quote, dating back to the December 29th, 2022, I'm here to help you. Affidavit of probable cause, right? But what we're seeing from the early, and I'm talking the very first interview of DM down at the Moscow Police Department, where she was taken along with several of the other HJ, EA, she said, this is what BF told me. She said, BF told me that, someone was throwing fireworks downstairs. I'm going to give you my impression that I give under the First Amendment. I think that those roommates were consistent. At some point, and we don't know yet because we haven't seen the texts, the calls, the interviews between the two, something changed to make it seem as though what they said was inconsistent. And I'm not yet understanding what it was. And we're not going to understand until we have, as the public, the interviews. We see the physical evidence. And we see the photographs, not what someone's describing that information to us as, but the actual evidence itself that we would have seen in a court of law if there was a trial. That's why the fact that this trial is not happening is really causing me to question so much about this case. Whoever opened the front door got tased immediately. And what about the DoorDash driver? MPD threw her under the bus. They threw her under the bus in this last, I don't know if you've had an opportunity. I've been throwing out a lot of stuff because what I do is I do 4 to 5 minute bits of usually pieces, whether it's a document from the court file, now it's from the MPD files. I'll throw out 4 to 5, maybe 6 minutes. It's not that long. But there's content that I put up today where the representative from the MPD published her name. I'm speaking of the DoorDash driver. We haven't seen that with anyone else. Everybody else, they have redacted their names. And they addressed the fact that in late June, that they began to try to get body cam footage, records, other information regarding the DoorDash driver from 3 different law enforcement agencies. And I believe that may have happened because independent content creators got a hold of that body cam footage and started to raise some questions. Do you know the body cam footage that I'm talking about? It was dated, I think it was September 4th, 2024 in Whitman. It was not in Idaho. It was across the state over in Whitman. And When I hear September 4th, 2024, I have to say, my mind immediately goes to the Idaho versus Kohberger case file, because that's the day that Judge John Judge granted the motion for change of venue, September 4th, 2024, from L'Etat. It went to Ada County. But apparently, someone published the body cam footage of reportedly the DoorDash driver saying words to the effect, "Oh, I'm the DoorDash driver." And it's muffled. This is what the representative of the MPD said in the report that you can review today. If you go on to the City of Moscow's website where these documents are, she said she watched that video, she listened, it sounds muffled, but it says something to the effect of, "I have to testify at the trial, the Idaho college girl, the 4 Idaho college girls trial," something like that. Brian, she refers to him not as Mr. Kohberger, she refers to him as Brian, parked right next to me. Now, have you seen the interview of the DD driver from the MPD files? Has anyone seen it? I did a video on it a couple of days ago. And from memory, I think it was Brett Payne who interviewed her. He comes up in a lot of these filings. Who remembers what MM, whose name she has been thrown? I'm telling you, I have never seen the Moscow Police Department release the name of anybody with the exception of JD in the affidavit of probable cause. I still don't understand why, of all the people named in the affidavit of probable cause, with the exception of the victims, that Detective Payne gave JD's first and last name. Yeah, okay. Richard Art's bringing up a few comments here. I'll be right back. Give us some comments here. I'll be right back. I have to just get some water, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. When I say I'm DIY indie, it is 100%. I literally had to get up. I forgot to get some water for myself and have gotten it. Now, a couple of people have made some comments here, including, I think Richard had said something to the effect that she had said this was her last delivery. She was working 12 to 18 hours. How is that possible? If your last delivery, and she had been on property somewhere around 3:45 or so, what's 12? So you're working from 3:45 in the afternoon of Saturday or earlier, doing DD deliveries, and this is your last one at 3:45. Something rather strange regarding that. In my opinion, I think she would have made a poor, at the very least, I'm giving my opinion, witness. And this is such a critical witness to the case. She is literally, supposedly, the last person who was on scene at 11:22 prior to the time of the start of the crimes. WB makes a great point, but spends 15 minutes looking for the house. WB, I'd like to ask you, because I know you've been very interested in this topic. Do you recall who she said had pulled? She's walking around, as WB has said. She's looking for the house. And I would be looking for the house because this house makes no sense to me. 1122 King Road, you face Queen Road. How is someone who's not familiar with the area supposed to find you? So she apparently, it sounds like she parked in the back and she's walking along that road. You know, the road that separates her from 1122, or did, from 500 Queen Road, looking for this. And suddenly a tan car pulls up to her with a man who has either blonde or red hair. Doesn't sound like Mr. Kohberger's description to me. Doesn't look like the picture he apparently took of himself, that selfie. Did he put on a wig? Did he run to the hair salon and dye his hair, if that was him? What is she talking about? That he parked right next to her. She never once describes anything sounding like a white car, much less an Elantra, much less anyone. He had very dark, thick hair. How do you get that? And then what about the discussion that she kept looking up at the third floor? And she is seeing someone, dark-haired woman, third floor bathroom. This is the floor where Madison and Kaylee are. This is not the bathroom on the first or second floor where you would expect guests would use. This is the third floor that's sort of separate from the rest of the building, which would be why I think that they would be the most desirable, and where the more senior students would be. They were both seniors. There's a woman, according to her, all the lights are on in the house. This is minutes before 4 o'clock. Who she's looking up at the third floor, and this woman's ducking. Ducking to me seems like you're concealing your identity. Now, I have ordered DoorDash and other food deliveries. I'm not going to duck from the driver. I want my food. If that were Xana, number one, what's Xana doing on the third floor? And number two, why is Xana ducking from her? You know, Payne said in his interview she was not able to identify any of the victims as being that woman who was in that window. So who's the woman who's in the window a few minutes before 4 o'clock, who's looking to duck, to possibly conceal her identity from the DoorDash driver? Or is the DoorDash driver completely making all of this up? I don't know. You know, we give this opinion per the First Amendment, but when you're inconsistent, you know, I mean, we've got her on video that many of you have seen. Brian drove right next to me, is what she's sounding like saying. She's got to be, she said she's a witness in this case against Brian. Why would she be a witness if she never saw him against him? What value could she add? Thoughts? Backing it up. Okay. DD described the guy that resembled ducks. Right, she did. Ladder dog. We're not going to name any people here. We can't. You know, we're concerned about, obviously, defamation, but a lot of people have said there's, you know, another woman who was seen coming out of the house during a prior noise complaint, seemed to have long dark hair. When did DM dye her hair? Richard, we don't know who it is. Has never been identified. But these are just some of the questions that have come up regarding this evidence. You know, so is this case really done? Is the correct person in prison? If he is, was there anyone else involved? You know, when we hear about this damage, and it takes your breath away. When you think about the damage to these 4 students, Xana was attacked, 60 times? Kaylee, unrecognizable, attacked with what her father has said is 2 different weapons. DM originally said in her first interview, and I've done a lot of interviews in my life. I give a lot of credence to what's said first because that's closest in time to the event. And she said nothing about a vacuum cleaner in his hands, nothing about something that a fire person would have. She said he had a triangular object in his hands, and it looked like a firearm. Now, isn't that consistent with what Mrs. G was told? Early interview, go back to the first week of the case. She gave an interview when she says that a family member who was in Moscow called her and said there was a mass, and the term, we've got to be careful on YouTube, but it was a firearm, and that Kaylee had been attacked with a firearm. Where would that information ever come? How does a rumor like that get started? And now that we find out, according to, I think, Officer Corbin Smith, he said he didn't even know what he was looking at. She was unrecognizable. How does that sort of add up? How long does it take to inflict that type of damage on a human being after you've already attacked another human being on that bed? And now you're going to go downstairs, you're going to run down the steps, you're going to run across the hall, if we're to believe the affidavit of probable cause, and now 60 times, 60, not 6, 60 times attack Xana. And then go over to Ethan, and then apparently sit down for a few minutes because you're so overcome, or whatever the explanation is. And then you go and you walk out, and we don't know if he looked directly at DM or didn't, and then leave. How do you do all of that in a matter of, 10 minutes? And then we hear these inconsistencies, that it was Kaylee who walked her dog when she got home. That's not what Bethany's saying. BF is saying that BF and Madison took Murphy out for a walk. BF went home. She grabbed some chips or whatever from her refrigerator. Madison knocks on the door. Have you seen Murphy? No, I haven't. And then we hear that Murphy's found in Kaylee's bedroom with a door open, with his beloved mother across the hall. He's not going to go in and investigate, apparently. And then we find out that Murphy was taken to the Humane Society. Was he possibly, if he was that quiet, was he given anything to stay quiet? Was he taken out of the house? Was he barking for 45 minutes, as a couple of the witnesses have said in this documentation that the MPD just released? He's taken to the Humane Society. Oh, Tina's reminding me it was an arrow-shaped object. Yes. First interview. Thank you, Tina. Tina is very much a stickler for the details and the documents. Tina's reminding us that what DM said she saw in the clad in black guy's hands was an arrow-shaped object. How we get to a vacuum cleaner or something that a firefighter holds from that description is anyone's guess. Does anyone know who returned Murphy? Murphy was taken to the Humane Society upon the orders of Sergeant Shane Gunderson, who ordered that Murphy was to be taken out of the house and he was to be taken to the Humane Society, where he was on the afternoon of the 13th. Do you know who picked him up and which Moscow police officer met him? Has anyone gotten to those documents yet? Yes. Gee Whiz is saying we might have more answers if they followed up with questions. Thank you, Gee Whiz. We're going to get to that in just a moment. Big round of applause for Gee Whiz. He is also a stickler for the details. He wants to know what is it about these lack of follow-up questions. Jack D, JD picked up Murphy. Do you know which member of the Moscow Police Department was sent to the Humane Society to meet JD? Does anyone know who? Which officer? I'm going to give you a hint. Bandfield undercover cops. Nope, wasn't Payne. Mamo's throwing in a very good guess, but it's not Detective Brett Payne. It was, yes, there we go. We're getting the comments here. Joey has made the correct. It was one of the two Bandfield cops, and his first name is not Jacob. It was Officer Nate Rosendahl, who was on Bandfield, just steps away from 1122 King Road, conducting undercover, I guess, operations, trying to identify underage students is what we've learned. He met JD at the Humane Society. Now, one would expect, I'm throw out a question to you. I don't think JD had anything to do with this. It's just my reading of this. And I'm just one person looking at evidence. I think he's completely not involved at all. But most law enforcement agencies would consider, especially an recently ex of one of the victims, as to be a central potential perpetrator, if not a POI, very early on in the case. So here we have JD, who is going to the Humane Society to try to pick up Murphy. Officer Rosendahl, who was on Bandfield just several hours earlier and didn't see anything, is turning him over to a potential POI. Wouldn't you think that this would be recorded? Wouldn't you think, just throwing this out here, we don't know, we're just citizens of the United States and of the world that are interested in this case. No body cam footage of when JD went to the Humane Society to pick up Murphy and whatever was said to him or not said and discussed by Officer Rosendahl. I'm just throwing my 2 cents out there, as I do as a proponent of the First Amendment. I would think that would be caught on body cam in the event that JD said something suspect, being as most police agencies would consider with nothing else or that early on in the investigation, an ex whose girlfriend of 5 years just broke up with him and is getting ready to go to Texas. I would think that should be on body cam, but it wasn't. Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, Mike, appreciate you so much. Oh, Richard, this is very healthy discussion in chat. Richard, the followers of my podcast, and the podcast is not original content on YouTube. It has white background, Idaho versus Coberger. It is an original podcast up on Spotify. It then populated onto iHeart and populated onto, I think, iTunes and Apple and Amazon and a few other places. I established this YouTube channel late last year because I needed something to be able to show the documents, because the podcast is just oral. It's me talking about what the documents show and encouraging my listeners to go to the docket and to read for themselves what the documents say and come up with their own conclusion. So, having had quite a bit of experience with the podcast and coming over here, the people who follow this channel don't want the information for themselves. They don't accept what anyone tells them. This whole linear early on, you're just going to have to trust us. No, they don't accept that. They're not 6 years old. They're not going to be treated like parents telling a 6-year-old, this is how it is and you have no say. They want to see the confirming evidence for themselves. And we've just gone through a period of 2.5 years where the Moscow Police Department has released literally no evidence to the public, where so much of the evidence as a result, and I'm saying it again, it's both sides. It's not just the state. The defense is just as guilty of having this case be as under seal as it was. And he's in a maximum security prison for almost a week now. Why is this evidence still being withheld from the public? That's my biggest question about this case at this time. Investigator Payne, we trust. Okay. And Isles of Shoals is that there was some liquid in JS's apartment. From what we understand, and this is now just relying on the documents that have been produced, JS's apartment is 500 Queen Road apartment. We're relying on the documents. Oh, we have a VIP in the room. They lived 1984. Kathy, you're amazing. No, I should say that you are amazing. If anyone has not heard, read the documents by They Live. I will say They Lived 1984 has come up with a jazz hands perfection called Read the Documents. And it's all about this case, that the documents are they're here for you to read. There was a line there. The PCA is not on TV. What's under seal means you can't see, you seal. I say, please go. He had mentioned me, or she had mentioned me, and my phone literally blew up that day. And it was because of They Live 1984. So please, if you have an opportunity, watch that video, sub to them. I think they're amazing as well. Jackie, thank you very much for your support. Jumping up and down, #1 fan. I thank you for your contribution. You made a lot of great comments, inquiries. What I like very much on the podcast is, and here is the communications between the people that are commenting, between Jackie and someone else, Gee Whiz, who will comment. They go back and forth and they debate things. That's, I think, very healthy in a democracy as we have. Okay, thank you, Kathy. Mamas, thank you very much. Oh, the Watcher, here late. Better late than never, Watcher. And I have to just basically say that I have to take ownership of that, because I do everything on this channel. I do the content, I do the production, I do the editing and advertising, marketing. I'm very bad at marketing. I've forgotten to tell people to be here today. So I'm very thankful that you have been here. Okay. Who has comments? Yes, Watcher, you can watch the replay. It will definitely be up. So, Joey, are you saying that you think that 7 people were involved? Interesting. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we did a poll about 45 minutes before we started this live, and 100 people had answered the poll. And the question was, now that Mr. Coberger has been sentenced, he's pled, he's in prison, do you feel that the 45-minute videotaped interview that was taken of him right after he was arrested — Mr. Kohberger was arrested, as you know, minutes after 1:00 a.m., right? In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, specifically in Albrightsville at his parents' home. He was taken by car to the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks. He arrived there at 2:00 and led into a room where he sees Detective Brett Payne and his partner from the ISP, and then has a 45-minute interview. It is videotaped. Now, I want to see that interview. I want to see if there is any evidence, because you can look body language, the way people speak, what they say. Was there anything incriminating that he said during those 45 minutes? Or conversely, is he saying things that would make one conclude potentially that he had nothing to do with the crimes? Well, this videotaped meeting is still withheld from the public as of today. So we did a poll. If you've had an opportunity, please answer the poll. Do you think that that videotaped interview of, by all people that you could imagine in the world, this was in Pennsylvania, was this interview conducted by Pennsylvania State Police Officer Justin Leary, who arrested Mr. Kohberger at his parents' home? No. Was it possibly by the Pennsylvania State Trooper, who was the co-author of the Pennsylvania Affidavit of Probable Cause, Brian S. Knoll, along with Justin Leary? No. It's Detective Brett Payne is interviewed Mr. Kohberger. So I, for one, would like to see that interview. And why hasn't it been released to the public? I would think that that would be one of the first things to have been released to the public. It remains under seal. So we'd like to hear from you if you think it should be released or not released. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Yes, thank you. WB is going to vote whether he feels that one can only say critically important interview of Brian C. Kohberger by, of all people, Brett Payne should or should not remain under seal. That's the question that we're throwing out. 3 hours for the feds to get Brian to plea. No. Richard Art. I don't know where that's coming from, that it took almost 3 hours, because according to Detective Brett Payne, Mr. Kohberger was brought to the barracks. You may be thinking about to get Brian Kohberger to the jail, the Monroe County Jail. That might have taken 3 hours, yes. But there was a quick, or maybe not so quick, pit stop between the parents' home in Albrightsville and the Monroe County Jail, which we've been talking about, and that would be no other place but the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks. He arrived there at approximately 2 a.m. on the 30th of December, and we have that on direct information by none other than Detective Brett Payne and the documents that were released by the city of Moscow. Now, why was Mr. Kohberger taken to the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks and put into an interview? Oh, I know. Because he was to be interviewed, and he did undergo a 45-minute interview with Detective Brett Payne and his colleague from the Idaho State Police. Early on, yes, Kathy to the jail. Okay, yes, okay. So Richard is clarifying that it did take, according to his research, it took 3 hours to get Mr. Kohberger from his parents' home in Albrightsville. Oh, and by the way, there's no body cam footage of the arrest in Albrightsville at his parents' home. No body cam footage. This was all, they've got some recordings, I think, but there's no body cam. So he's taken there, taken under arrest, and then he's put in a car and then taken to the Pennsylvania State Police Barracks, where he's interviewed for 45 minutes. That may be the explanation of why it took him 3 hours to get from his parents' home in Albrightsville to the Monroe County Jail to be booked. Let's see, we don't know. Well, the watcher, thank you for joining us, is wondering, was he Mirandized before he spoke with Detective Brett Payne at the aforementioned Pennsylvania State Police Barracks? Well, the watcher, according to none other than Detective Brett Payne, he says in his reports that we have just gotten as a result of the July 23rd dissemination of documents, you're going to just have to trust Detective Brett Payne, who said that Mr. Kohberger was Mirandized. Now, we're going to have to wait, and hopefully we'll get this video to see if he was or was not. But we'll see. Okay, so found out he was worried about the parents and the dog. Yes, he was. Oh, good point, Mr. Mojo Rising. Mr. Coberger did indeed say, according to, and again, we have to take this on Detective Brett Payne's word. Hi, Julianne, how are you? That Mr. Coberger was concerned about his parents and his dog. Remember, Mr. Coberger is just coming from his home where all heck broke loose. And this raid had just happened where doors are being kicked down and everything, lights are being turned on. His parents are being zip tied on the floor and he's being taken away. He apparently asked about his dog and his parents. Video, no, watcher, the video is not public. It is not public at all. Now, here I'm going to throw something out there. You know, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania released the Pennsylvania Affidavit of Probable Cause way back, I think it was February of 2023. And that's where the public got the names of all the people, including the private driver who was redacted in Idaho. Pennsylvania was like, oh, we're not redacting this. We're releasing everything. I'm surprised that someone has not served a public records request upon the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for a certain videotaped 45 minutes, apparently in length, interview of an individual from Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, by an individual out of Idaho. I won't say anything further. Payne was hunting with Fry. I have, yes, yeah. Delete DS is saying he or she has Asperger's, twice diagnosed. I can't imagine he was processed very well. Even a normal person wouldn't. Yes, we have to take into consideration when everyone keeps saying how strange he looks, he has empty eyes and everything else, that he was apparently diagnosed and just diagnosed in his adulthood with autism. I don't think they were hunting. Brent Kapaka. Okay, so any other questions at this point? Because I need to go back and take a look at further documents that were released by the Moscow city of Moscow for the first time to the public, even though it's not evidence. Okay, delete. I forgot to quote. Okay, well, just want to say, I want to thank you all for being here today. Please listen to the live again. It's going to be available on this channel. We'll be doing some more lives down the line. If you haven't subbed to our channel, please consider doing so, and please like it. Really helps our channel grow. And if you haven't, if you're considering being a member, I would greatly appreciate that as well. And I want to thank the watcher who has been a long-term member. Thank you. I appreciate you watching the replay and the watcher. You always give great feedback. Please, everyone, leave questions, comments, your feedback per the First Amendment. And we are together here trying to figure out what happened. I think that really this channel has transitioned from Idaho versus Coberger to 1122 investigation. And we're going to continue to bring you updates as this matter continues. If Mr. Coberger decides to appeal, we'll bring that to you as well. Nothing on the record at all stating that he has any intention to do so. And also, if and when the documents start getting under sealed in Idaho versus Coberger, which is a closed case, we're going to let you know. All right, everybody. Yes, delete. We will do. Thank you all very much. Oh, no, Daniel, thank you. Subscribe. I've heard that from a few people. Some people have been involuntarily unsubscribing to our channel. Please make sure that you are subbed so you get notifications. And oh my gosh, the watcher has sent 5 indie sub gift memberships. And there we go. Watcher, thank you. Welcome Down the Rabbit Hole. Welcome Crossroads. Welcome Richard's Art. Welcome Eric. Welcome Delete This. Thanks to the watcher for your unbelievable generosity. Ms. Lulu, I'm counting on you not to unsubscribing to my channel. Thank you. Thank you all very much. I want to thank you all very much. We will see you on the podcast. We're on As I've said, we're on Apple. We're on Spotify is the home of the Idaho versus Coberger podcast. But I really like the YouTube channel because it allows you to search the past content. If you're interested in anything like change of venue, you can do that. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you all very, very much. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye, all.